I know you want the drama. I know you want the tea. The two main reasons why I decided to leave Mexico were, and every single person I've ever talked to that does that hates it. Wild stuff, right? Okay, so now let's get into the pros. Hello, and welcome to the Empress Podcast. I am your host, Jessica, known in the online space as Jess the Empress. I started this podcast to help you be present with yourself, cope with chaos, and simplify your life. I do this by combining psychology, behavioral science, and the tarot. I have a background in mental health, specifically a master's in clinical social work from USC, and I'm a professional tarot reader. So get ready to have a nurturing, creative, and empowering experience with me as we use practical magic. Hey love, before we get to today's episode, I want to ask you to rate and review my podcast. Giving me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts would mean the world to me. I love knowing who's listening and what everyone is getting from the episode, so please take a moment of your time to share your thoughts, and I look forward to reading your reviews soon. Hey there, coffee lovers. Are you tired of settling for boring coffee? I have a treat for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Heartwork Coffee Bar, your one-stop destination for exceptional coffee experiences. Whether you're a coffee connoisseur or just someone who appreciates a great cup of joe, Heartwork Coffee Bar is here to elevate your coffee game to new heights. At Heartwork Coffee Bar, they take pride in their craft because each batch is carefully roasted to perfection, ensuring that every sip is a symphony of flavor. From the rich and the robust to the light and fruity, they have a coffee blend for every palate. And here's the best part. For you amazing podcast listeners, Heartwork Coffee Bar is offering an exclusive 10% discount on your purchase. Just use the code Empress10 at checkout and you'll save big on your order. Why settle for ordinary when you can indulge in the extraordinary coffee from Heartwork Coffee Bar? Remember to use code Empress10 for that special 10% discount and treat yourself to the coffee experience that you deserve. Don't miss out on this fantastic offer. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks to Heartwork Coffee Bar for making today's episode possible. Now go grab your favorite mug, brew a fresh cup, and enjoy the podcast with the perfect companion, Heartwork Coffee Bar. Cheers. Okay, besties, it's time. It's time to talk about my breakup with Mexico. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Jess, and we are going to get into a change that I have recently undergone, and I'm excited to share it with all of you because you may not know, but I was living in Mexico for 2 years. I moved there in 2021 from San Diego, and it was an adventure. Like a relationship, there were ups and there were downs, there were pros and there were cons. And I'm going to talk about what led me back here to San Diego, which is where I'm currently at, and what I learned about myself along the way in my time in Mexico. All right, so let's get into it. Because I want to end on a high note, I'm actually going to start with the cons, okay? So I first want to address why I left Mexico. I know you want the drama. I know you want the tea. It's really not that dramatic, but it just wasn't bringing me the balance and the support that I really, really want in my life. There's several factors for this, and we're going to get into them as we go into the cons. The two main reasons why I decided to leave Mexico were the stress that it was having on my relationship with my partner and the isolation. The isolation factor comes from that a lot of people just didn't want to cross the border to visit me. I get it. A lot of people say they want to do it, but in reality, a lot of people really don't want to do it. And I fully get it because it's a lot of hassle. It's a lot of stress. And that stress is the same thing that my partner and I experienced. So I get it. You know, I'm not like blaming anyone, but I am just being really real about my friends here in San Diego and then my experiences in Mexico. I only saw a few people less than one handful of times while I was living over there in 2 years. Now I saw my partner pretty frequently, But crossing the border, like I said, has its stressors. And there were times where we couldn't get to see each other. I had frequent power outages and water outages, not as a result from not paying a bill, but just because things are very different there and it's not always consistent. There's a whole different system and infrastructure, and it has a very different way of functioning. It doesn't really operate the same like it does in the US. And so there was a lot of times where I just didn't have water for a week. I didn't have hot water. I didn't have electricity, and I get it. Like, a lot of people would freak out. I feel like I got used to it after a while, but it wasn't necessarily something I loved getting used to. I would say that was one of the other stressors as well, because I am primarily based online. That is something I'm working on changing. But when I was down there, I was like, okay, I guess I just can't work this week. I need to reschedule my clients. And thank God I have flexible clients and like really understanding people in my life. But yeah, that was a pretty stressful thing to have to navigate. And then regarding the relationship, like I said, crossing the border back and forth, it takes a physical, mental, and emotional toll on you, especially if you're doing it frequently. I know a lot of people in Mexico who cross every day to send their kids to school, or the kids are going to school. They travel into San Diego to work, and then they come back over the border at night. And every single person I've ever talked to that does that hates it. Like, it's one of the least favorite experiences that they have in their life, even with the Sentry Pass, which is a pass that allows them to come in and out of Mexico really quickly instead of waiting in a longer line. The isolation factor was really, really serious for me. It led to depression and me being in a functional freeze state for, I would say, pretty much the whole 2 years that I was down there. And it's definitely a bummer, but it is something that I'm no longer experiencing, which is great. I'm working actively on overcoming that functional freeze. It's been so wonderful to be back here in the States and connecting with my friends in a way that I can see them frequently, and it feels just so much more relaxing. I'm a person that loves to be around other people, not all the time, not all day, every day, but I definitely have my core group of girlies and people that I just really, really enjoy. So being able to be around them now is just, I don't know, it's just warming my heart and just creating so much of a greater sense of fulfillment in my day-to-day life. Some of the other cons were that my dog was attacked several different times by feral dogs and people who bred their dogs to fight. And that was really unfortunate. He has scars on his little face, and he's such a great guy. He's always my protector, and it became pretty bad for me because I wasn't able to go on walks as relaxed as I prefer to be. I like to have a really long leisurely walk, hot girl walk, whatever, and that's a way that I bond with my dog. We'll go on longer walks together. And to not be able to do that was, again, a contributing factor in my isolation, and was also something that was a huge emotional weight on me. I ended up getting a dog walker for him when I was down there because she was wonderful. She had worked with rescue dogs, and she had no problem standing up for herself when other dogs were around. But because in my experience, the attacks happened multiple times, I could not release the panic. It was very much a hypervigilant state that I could not get out of, and any dog I was just very distrusting with. And when I tell you, even if it was a Chihuahua, which, if you don't know, my dog is a pit bull, so size wise is very different, but those dogs will come after you. Not all of them down there, but a lot of them, especially the feral ones, because they're just wild, and they're very scrappy. They have to be that way to survive. So again, there's no blame. This is just the reality of my experiences down there. So yeah, that was definitely a bit of a bummer. I really did enjoy going on walks by myself though, because I loved the architecture. Wait, I'll get into that in a minute, but my dog being attacked was a definite negative. And then again, not being able to go on relaxing long walks because I just couldn't release the tension, and I never knew what dog was going to be around the corner. Another con was that I was robbed. It was only one time, but it was still pretty shitty. I took an Uber, and the Uber driver purposefully went down a wrong direction, and then a cop pulled us over. And I say this in air quotes because this is a very common scam that happens. whatever. And the cop made me pay him. And I was like, this is such bullshit. They have bigger weapons than they do in the United States. And so it was pretty interesting to be pulled over with someone that had quite a large piece of weaponry. I don't really know what you call it. It was very nerve-wracking, and it again created a lot of distrust in me. It created a lot of anxiety and travel anxiety on top of the already mentioned anxiety when crossing. So like every time I got into a cab or had to take the longer route into the border, I had just a ton of anxiety that I really couldn't release, and I became very hyper vigilant. So that was a negative thing for sure. And the other cons are like people just don't do business the same way because it's a whole different culture. So I'm gonna get into the pros of the culture in a minute, but the cons are that people do not show up on time, at least the time that they state. So let's say that you and I had an appointment at 8:30 in the morning. You would be there at 8:30 in the morning, right? Well, it's definitely not the same, or at least in the area that I was in, it's just very, very leisurely. So, it could be noon before somebody showed up. It could be the next day. When I needed to get my internet installed when I first moved down there, somebody was in my apartment doing it at 10 o'clock at night. 10 o'clock at night. When my electricity got knocked out, there was a wire that had actually fallen. Keep in mind that here in the States, wires are typically done underground, whereas over there, there's still like the wooden poles with like the wires and stuff on them for telephones and everything. And one of the wires got knocked down. Took 2 days to get somebody to come out and fix it. The little conversation I had with him, he did say he was super busy, and I think that's why it just took him, so long to come out. But people are used to that. Like, that is just the way that it operates down there. So if you put in a request, you can expect to have a 3 to 4 day window, sometimes a 2-week window before somebody will come and help you out with your actual problem. Wild stuff, right? Okay, so now let's get into the pros. When I was living there, I lived a half a block from the beach, and this is like chef's kiss of an experience. I am so glad I did it because I have always wanted to live that close to the beach. If you don't know anything about San Diego real estate, it is not cheap to live anywhere near the beach. Mexico offered a cheaper and very possible for me experience to live that close to the water. Falling asleep with the sound of waves crashing was really, really, really cool, and I'm so grateful that I did that. It's a little different nowadays. I don't mind turning on my soundscapes. I love my soundscapes. I've been falling asleep to them for years. But yeah, to say that I live that close to the beach was amazing. I used to take my dinner out and sit on the beach and just watch the sunset, which was really, really cool. And then speaking of landscape and different views, I really did like how the terrain is different. The beaches themselves are pretty clean. There is a different landscape though, like I said. So there's a beach wall in Playas de Tijuana, which is where I was. And over the years, the wall has actually fallen down a little bit. So there's like these big rocks that make really cool sounds when water is running down them. And then if you walk the whole beach, which is what I did for quite a while, you end over by these cliffs, and these cliffs are like stunning. There's like birds flying in and out of them, and there's really cool dolphins that you could see all the time. So that was a really incredible experience. And then the boardwalk is really cute. Like, Playas de Tijuana is a very like romantic area. There's a lot of touristy places there, but I would say is more of a family couples kind of vibe. So the boardwalk has a lot of little restaurants on it and places that you can shop, and like it's all really, really cute. And also a different culture, right? So people are speaking a different language. I believe that people are so friendly there because my experiences were like most people were really, really friendly. If I had questions, people were very happy to answer. The majority of people did speak both Spanish and English, which is great because when I didn't know what the word was in Spanish, I could just code switch to English. I definitely learned a lot of Spanish there. I'm still learning. I plan on being a life learner for Italian and for Spanish. So it was a great place for me to like immerse myself and to understand the nuances of language, when to use certain things, and then different cultural etiquette. I learned what a great taco tastes like. I will never have the same love for tacos in the States as I do for the tacos in Mexico. Like, they're incredible. The carne itself in Mexico is like top tier. Like, it's so good. But the hospitality, you know, the fact that people do open their doors, that they want you to come into their shops, that they're very welcoming, that they want to have conversations with you and understand your perspective. I would say overall, I felt really, really welcome there in Playas de Tijuana. So I'm really grateful for that. Another thing I really loved were the food markets and the little cafes. Like, oh my God, they're so cute. There's just something quaint about like little towns and places that are so unique. There's no copycat, you know, like there's nothing like it. And I just think those things are really, really amazing. The outdoor markets featured a ton of local farms and local farmed food, which was also really great. And then of course I got to practice my Spanish because there's nothing to do with your technology. You're not paying with Venmo, you're paying in pesos or dollars, and then you're asking for how much is this, how much is a bag of that. I only need 2. So just imagine the kind of flow that was happening in those conversations. They're basic, yeah, but they are everyday, really important conversations because small talk is a real important thing. And I could have small talk with quite a few people, so that was a plus. And I learned so much about myself. Like, the fact that I actually lived in Mexico for 2 years is incredible. There's a lot of negativity about Mexico and the people of Mexico, and I just think it's ridiculous. If anybody is criticizing, I usually ask them, how much time have you spent there? And that will typically quiet a lot of people quickly because most people haven't spent time there. So if they haven't spent time, they just don't know. And I think, again, it's like any other experience. There could be highs and there could be lows. And my experience, because I lived there for 2 years, had a mix of everything. But I learned that I can be way more flexible than I ever thought. I learned that I can push myself out of my comfort zone. I learned that I can achieve some of my bucket list goals really, really quickly. I learned the value of dedication in my relationship and of having to navigate and negotiate really tough situations and tough times. Living abroad has definitely strengthened me and my relationship. I'm so proud of myself. I'm proud that I tried. I'm proud that I did it. And again, the worst part of it for me was the stress on my relationship and the isolation factor. So getting back to the things that I really value is amazing, and I'm just, again, so happy to be here. If you guys have any questions about what else I learned or just random things that you want to know, I would be so happy to answer those questions. You can always message me at 909-619-2831. That's my business cell phone line, and we can chit chat. Don't hesitate to ask me those questions. But I do hope that this, helps you see this perspective that I had the whole time I was in Mexico. I didn't talk too much about it online, and the reason for that is because I was really nervous about putting where I was while I was in another country. I didn't have the same form of protection that I do over here. I didn't have my friends and family close, like I mentioned, and so I felt a little more vulnerable putting things out there. So I decided to keep it quiet. People knew, but I wasn't necessarily posting constantly about my location or about my life and lifestyle down there. But I really tried to get out as often as I could, but I ended up really just being overwhelmed and keeping to myself. I tried to keep my self-care up as best as possible, but being in a functional freeze state definitely took its toll on my mind and my body, and I'm grateful to be back in the States, like I said, and just getting into a new flow for myself and a new flow with my relationship. So Mexico is behind me and the US is in front of me. If you have, again, any questions about what it was like to live down there, or you're thinking about living down there and you want to just chit chat about it before you dedicate yourself to it, then send me a message and we'll talk soon. Okay, bye.